And welcome again to the Study Bible Study, where we study the Bible with study Bibles. And Revelation 17:14 tells us, "And these shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall conquer them, for he is Lord of lords, he is King of kings. And they who are with him are called and chosen and faithful." God bless and amen. Now, our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us, and deliver us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Okay, let's actually get some reading done this session. Now, the bourgeoisie marriage is in reality a system of wives in common, and thus at the most what the communists might possibly be reproached with. It is that they desire to introduce in substitution for a hypocritically concealed and openly legalized community of women. For the rest, it is self-evident that the abolition of the present system of production must bring with it the abolition of community of women, springing from that the prostitution, both public and private. Now, the communists are further reproached with the desiring to abolish countries and nationality. Now, the working men have no country. We cannot take from them that which they have not got. Since the proletariat must first of all acquire political supremacy, now this must rise to the leading class of the nation. This must constitute itself in the nation. It is so far itself national, though not in the bourgeoisie sense of the word. National differences and antagonisms between people are daily more and more vanishing, owing to the development of the bourgeoisie, to freedom of commerce, to the world market, to uniformity in the mode of production and in the conditions of life corresponding thereto. Now, the supremacy of the proletariat will cause them to vanish still faster. United action of the leading civilized countries, at least, is one of the first conditions for emancipation of the proletariat. Now, in proportion as the exploration of one individual by another is put to an end by the exploitation of one nation by another, will also be put an end to. In proportion as the antagonism between classes within nation vanishes, the hostility of one nation to another nation will come to an end. Now, the charges against communism made from a religious and philosophical and generally from an ideological standpoint are not deserving of serious examination. Does it require a deep intuition to comprehend that man's ideas, views, and conceptions, in one word, man's consciousness, changes with every change in the conditions of his material existence, in his social relations, and in his social life? Now, what else does the history of ideas prove than that intellectual production changes its character in proportion as material production is changed? The ruling ideas of each age have ever been the ideas of its ruling class. Now, when people speak of the ideas that revolutionize society, they do but express the fact that within old society the elements of a new one have been created, and that the dissolution of old ideas keeps an even pace with the dissolution of the old conditions of existence. Now, when the ancient world was in its last throes, when ancient religions were overcome by Christianity, when Christian ideas succumbed in the 18th century to rationalists' ideas, feudal society fought its death battle with the revolutionary bourgeoisie. Now, the ideas of religious liberty and freedom of conscience merely gave expression to the sway of free competition within the domain of knowledge. Undoubtedly, it will be said religious, moral, philosophical, and juridical ideas have been modified in the course of historical development, but religion, morality, philosophy, political science, and law constantly survived this change because they're not foundational doctrines. They're meant to change Now, there are, besides eternal truths such as freedom, justice, etc., that are common to all states of society, but communism abolishes eternal truths. It abolishes all religion and all morality. Instead of constituting them on a new basis, it therefore acts in contradiction to all past historical experience. Now, what does this accusation reduce itself to? The history of all past society has consisted in the development of class antagonisms that assume different forms at different epochs. Now, but whatever form they may have taken, one fact is common to all past ages: the exploitation of one part of society by the other. No wonder then that the social conscience of past ages despise all of the multiplicity and variety it displays, moves within certain common forms or general ideas which cannot completely vanish except with the total disappearance of class antagonisms. Now, the communist revolution is the most radical rupture with the traditional properties, the traditional property relations. No wonder that its development involves the most radical rupture within traditional ideas such as Christianity. Now, but let us have done with the bourgeoisie objections to communism. We have seen above that the first step in revolution by the working class is to raise the proletariat to the position of ruling as to win the battle of democracy. Now, the proletariat will use its political supremacy to wrest by degrees all capital from the bourgeoisie, to centralize all instruments of production in the hands of the state, of the proletariat organized as the ruling class, and to increase the total productive forces as rapidly as possible. Of course, in the beginning, this cannot be effected except by means of despotic inroads on the rights of property and the conditions of the bourgeoisie. Now, production by means of measures, therefore, which appear economically insufficient and untenable, but which, in the course of the movement, outstrip themselves, necessitate further inroads upon the old social order, and are unavoidable as means of entirely revolutionizing the mode of production. Now, these measures will of course be different in different countries. Nevertheless, the most advanced countries, the following will be pretty and generally applicable. Now, the abolition of property in a land and the application of all rents of land to public purposes. Now, point number 1, abolition of property in land and application of all rents of land to public purposes. Number 2, a heavy progressive or graduated income tax. Number 3, abolition of all rights of inheritance. You're not going to be inheriting nothing because nobody will have anything. Now, number 4, confiscation of the property of all immigrants and rebels. Number 5, centralization of credit in the hands of the state by means of a national bank with state capital and an exclusive monopoly. Now, number 6, centralization of the means of communication and transport in the hands of the state. That's actually, number 5 is interesting. The centralization of credit in the hands of the state by means of a national bank with state capital and an exclusive monopoly. That one's interesting because if you watch the news, they talk a lot about, because of the COVID over, I guess, I'm only going to say like maybe a 3 or 4 month period because this is actually pretty new stuff. The deficit increased by billions. Like literally the government was spending, our government was handing out billions. Not thousands, not hundreds, not millions, but they're handing out billions, so. Where exactly did they get the backing for that money? Because I'm pretty sure our money isn't actually worth anything unless it is backed by something. And what exactly is it backed by? But I could be wrong. Anyways, Now, number 6, centralization of the means of communication and transportation in the hands of the state. 7, extension of factories and instruments, production owned by the state, bringing into cultivation of wastelands and the improvement of the soil, generally in accordance with a common plan. Now, number 8, equal liability of all to labor. Establishment of industrial armies, especially for agriculture. Now, the combination of agriculture with manufacturing industries, gradual abolition of the distinction between town and country by a more equitable distribution of the population over the country. Now, number 10, free education for all children in public schools. Abolition of the child's factory labor in its present form. Combination of education with industrial production. We already have somewhat free education in public schools. They are afraid to educate the children with whatever they choose to teach them. Free education. Now, when in the course of development class distinctions have disappeared and all production has been concentrated in the hands of a vast association of the whole nation, the public power will lose its political character. Political power, properly so called, is merely the organized power of one class for oppressing another. If the proletariat during its contest with the bourgeoisie is compelled by the force of circumstances to organize itself a class, if by means of a revolution it makes itself the ruling class, and such as sweeps away by the force of conditions of production, then it will, along with these conditions, have swept away the conditions for the existence of class antagonisms and of classes generally, and will thereby have abolished its own supremacy as a class. In place of the old bourgeoisie society with its classes and class antagonisms, we shall have an association in which the free development of each of the condition for the free development of all. Just keeps getting better and better, doesn't it? But everything will be free, and it will be for all. Free and for all. Two famous words, free and for all. And this is our communism manifesto study on the Study Bible study, where we study the Bible with study Bibles. And our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever. Amen. And Revelation 17:14 tells us, and these shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall conquer them. For he is Lord of lords, he is King of kings, and they who are with him are called and chosen and faithful. God bless and amen.